Hi, I'm David Shipler.
And I'm Daniel Zwerdling. Two reporters. Start now.
Hi, Danny. How you doing?
Great, thanks. And here's our mission today. We're going to learn how a high school teacher inspired his students to do something they'd never done before. And as a result, they exposed an environmental scandal that shook up their whole community. And maybe more important than that, the students started seeing the world in new ways.
That was almost 30 years ago. But now this episode has come back to light because some filmmakers have made a really interesting new documentary about what those high school students pulled off. And it's been winning awards at film festivals across the country. Here's an excerpt from the expose that the students originally made back in 1997.
For the last 30 years, garbage haulers connected to organized crime have illegally dumped toxic waste and red bag waste throughout New York's lower Hudson Valley, often with the knowledge and cooperation of politicians, law enforcement officers, and government agents. Almost all of our region's toxic landfills are built over major aquifers. Much of our water may already be contaminated.
That's pretty amazing stuff for high school students to produce in an English class. Anyway, let's welcome the teacher who caused all this trouble, Fred Isseks.
Hi, Danny and Dave. It's great to be here.
Fred taught at Middletown High School, about an hour from New York City. Now he's cheerfully retired. Cheerfully? Is that true?
Cheerfully, absolutely.
Well, it's good to have you.
And thank goodness, Fred, that in your retirement you have obsessively kept every shred of video that your students took all those 30-some years ago and carefully cataloged in your basement.
Yes.
Fred, you and some of your students who played a big role in that investigation are suddenly in demand. Am I right? You've been speaking at some of those film festivals I mentioned a moment ago and to community groups around the country. Why do you think audiences are so interested in a high school project from almost 3 decades ago?
Well, I think that what we did 3 decades ago is pretty relevant right now. We were confronting corruption in government, and we were practicing what we thought was decent journalism. And the need for decent journalism continues, and the corruption that we see in government continues. So I think it strikes a chord these days. It's also a film about education, and I think that we have many questions and concerns about education as it becomes under attack from the present administration. So the film has a resonance to it now.
And one of your former students who took part in that investigation joins us now, Rachel Raimist. Hi, Rachel.
Hi.
These days, Rachel is a TV director, and she teaches directing at various film schools. Rachel, back when you were at Middletown High School, you helped kick off the investigation into the toxic wastes. And forgive me for bringing up something you told me during a phone call, because this isn't in the documentary that's been playing around the country. You told me that Fred Isseks recruited you, got you into this class that was making this investigation when he found you in the parking lot of the high school smoking marijuana one day.
Thanks for exposing that on a podcast. Fantastic. My kids believe that I am a rule follower because my kids are good rule followers. And watching this documentary, they realized, wow, our mom was really pushing the boundaries of things. Sorry, my dogs are very excited for this podcast.
As are we.
But yes, that was true. I don't know if Fred knew that that's what he walked upon, but that's what was happening. I just remember not being super engaged in high school. I can remember the teacher whose class I was cutting because I did not enjoy his history class. I did not enjoy his politics. And he would look at me in the parking lot from the window and sneer at me and scream, "I'm calling your mother." And, Fred was the opposite of that. He'd ask a question, he'd hang around to listen to your answer and actually engage you in conversation. And that was something that I would say most of my other teachers at Middletown High School didn't do. I don't think anyone else actually cared about what we had to say or what we thought. And Fred did. I think it was easy for him to recruit me because of who he is and how he is.
Well, we all need at least one teacher like that, don't we? And I think that, Rachel, you're a TV director. It sounds as if this experience as an investigative reporter, in effect, doing this film had an impact on you in terms of your profession. Is that fair to say?
Definitely. Fred putting cameras in our hands really, I think, for so many of us, changed the course of our lives. With a camera, adults responded to what we had to say and what we were doing. And I think without a camera, young people are really easily dismissed, especially in the early 90s when a camera was something different and unique. It wasn't like everyone had a camera in their pockets like we do right now. And I don't know that I would have grown up to be a filmmaker or a college professor if I didn't have Fred as a teacher.
In just a bit, we're going to bring in another former student who also played a key role in your remarkable high school investigation. The new documentary, by the way, we should mention, is about you. It's called Teenage Wasteland. The filmmakers are Jesse Moss and Amanda McBain.
And we want to retell your story because we hope it'll do kind of what Fred said a couple minutes ago, which is that we want it to resonate with people now about what's going on in the nation's schools. I mean, kids, teachers are so afraid of saying something that won't be part of the Trump world vision, and they'll get in trouble, if not fired. We've interviewed librarians who were fired and who were about to be fired. So, Fred, how did you come up with this idea in the first place, taking a bunch of students who knew nothing about journalism and throwing them into a really serious investigation?
Well, kind of went into it blindly. If I had known what we were getting into, I don't know if I would have been as enthusiastic about it in the beginning. But we started off slowly. We got a couple of cameras donated to the school by the local cable company. And we just started making music videos and fooling around with it. And as more students became interested, the district decided to make an investment and build a small TV studio. And at that point, they figured we need to have people in that room all periods of the day. So they created another class for me to teach, an English class, which we called Electronic English.
Electronic English.
Electronic English, yes. We figured it's English, but we're using electrons instead of pencils and paper. So that first semester that we were doing it, we decided we would get into journalism and do stories around the school.
Hi, welcome to High School Update. My name is Corey Burris.
And I'm Brianne Pisak.
And this week's show is going to have segments on the chorus.
And the greater idea, the grander idea, was to do stories in the community, to break out of the walls of the school and report on what's happening in the neighborhoods, what's happening around town. To that end, in the summer, right before the class started, I was introduced to a couple of guys who worked at a local landfill. We interviewed them, and they told us total crazy story about how these landfills, which were designed for local municipal garbage, had been converted into toxic waste dumps used by companies, industries all over the New York metro area. So plan one, get these guys on tape, use it in class, use it as an example of investigative journalism and the stories we can tell, and take it from there. My original idea was that this story would last for maybe a couple of weeks. The authorities would become aware of what we had done. They would have pursued it. There would have been arrests. The landfill would have been cleaned up, and that would be the end of the story. As it turned out, we worked on it for the next 7 years, going deeper and deeper into it.
7 years, incredible. And as you told me on the phone, Fred, there were dozens of students, of course, who came and went in your class during the 1990s and took part in your ongoing investigation. Rachel and the other kids would graduate, and new students would take their place.
Yes.
Rachel, what are your early memories of this investigation? What were the turning points for you in this whole project?
I remember Fred showing a video of a woman talking about and showing like orange sludge in her basement. And that moment was when it became real. Where does that come from? It didn't look like anything sort of normal or natural or what water should look like at all. And so that's the first memory that I have is we all sort of gathered around the TV and he showed us this footage. And I remember, getting very excited about this whole thing.
One of the things that struck me about the documentary was how you guys, you students, got yourself into really kind of almost scary situations. Weren't you there the day a prominent environmental scientist from the New York State came to look at the landfill with you guys, Ward Stone, and there was this big confrontation between him and a city official and law enforcement?
What have you got to hide?
I have nothing to hide, sir. There
Yes,
are no
you do.
Mr. Stone.
You
the
have
agreement,
something to
Mr.
hide.
Stone. The agreement with the Yosemite Hinching.
And by the way, we should tell our listeners, if you noticed music under that clip, it's because the filmmakers added it for dramatic effect to their new documentary. You'll hear music faintly under other clips too.
I absolutely remember that day with Ward Stone. The I-9 News, they were there filming us, filming Ward, and Cummings, who was he the county executive or?
Wait, so the local news station had heard that you guys were making a film, and so they came to cover you?
The news was filming the whole thing unfolding, and we were filming them. It was a lot of cameras, a lot happening, but it did get tense. So Ward was the pathologist who covered the entire state of New York.
I want to look around if I don't
No,
take
sir.
samples.
You're not doing anything. You're leaving.
You're a problem.
No, sir. You have been advised to leave the property at this time.
And
You know
basically,
very
the town supervisor took the samples and wouldn't even let Ward see the results of the samples.
Wow.
And there were troopers and sort of this really tense situation with the police. So, it felt real. It felt dangerous in that moment.
And Fred, you're a teacher there, an English teacher. What are you thinking? Like, I'm about to be arrested. I'm going to lose my job. I mean, weren't you worried about some sort of backlash?
Well, the funny thing is, what you're talking about is one of the most exciting parts of the movie, or at least one of the most confrontational parts, where it looked like there might even be some physical violence between the town supervisor and the wildlife pathologist. And what amuses me about it every time I watch it is realizing I wasn't there.
Oh, you weren't there.
I wasn't at the landfill that day.
Oh.
No, that was the week that our daughter was born, so I was at the hospital. And the students, they were perfectly capable of handling all this on their own.
Yeah, and it just goes to show how much faith you had in them. And one of the students who was handling things with Rachel during that tense showdown was Jeff Dutemple.
Jeff Dutemple joins us now. He also got involved in I love this name, electronic English class, just as Rachel was getting ready to graduate. So you're like the next generation, Jeff. What do you remember about that confrontation?
I remember, I think it was just us being kind of ignorant kids. It just seemed that was fun to me to watch these adults have it out in front of us. It was, I don't know, it's like listening to a diss track, right? Like a fun thing to watch.
So your situation as you began to report on it was, as I understand it, that toxic waste was being dumped in the town landfill. The town government seemed to not be concerned or maybe even trying to cover it up, whereas the state inspector was coming in, the pathologist, to take samples and document the problem.
I think it was one of those well-kept secrets. It wasn't discussed openly that there was a toxic landfill in town, but just about everybody knew it. They'd all seen the trucks come in. They'd all heard the stories. They all saw the leakage. The town naturally poo-pooed any kind of investigation, and they downplayed any kind of danger in the dump because, as we believed, the town board were the people who were profiting from it. That some of these illegal dumpers would come up with trucks that didn't have permits to dump. The landfill operators, Dutch and Willie, would ask them for a permit, and they said, well, we don't have it. And they would disappear for 15 minutes and come back with a signed piece of paper or a napkin that says, give these guys the right of way. And there were no records in town hall of any of the dumping, no records of any of the money that changed hands because of it.
Were the dumpers paying off the town or something, or what?
Yes, that's what it appeared to be. Naturally, we didn't get any photographs of bags of money changing hands, but the assumption is that money changed hands, that the money was given to various people on the board to look the other way.
I mean, where did this go from there? You did make an early film or two, right? And you showed it to the public. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first one, if I'm not mistaken, it was just called The Town of Walkill Dumb.
This videotape raises questions that have gone unanswered for over a decade.
And it was very clunky. It was very raw. There are clips of it shown in the movie of us showing, the town of Bloomingburg, which was at the Bloomingburg Town Hall, Fred?
The Grange Hall in the village of Bloomingburg.
That was kind of the first public exhibition, just to get the beginnings of the story out while we were just trying to figure it all out.
How did a dump designed and supported by the town of Wallkill for household garbage become a toxic hazardous waste site? Where are the records and permits showing what went into the dump, where it came from, and who profited by it? What of our public
This is also amazing to me. Here is a high school, Middletown, New York. You get your students to put on a presentation, and it's not, some high school play or musical. They're showing a documentary at the Grange Hall and then other places, telling the town, hey, we're finding out about this illegal dumping of toxic waste.
Would you say that we have a very significant possibility of a severe health hazard in this entire area?
Absolutely, no question about it.
What was it like to be at one of these meetings and see people watching your work, your documentary, and applauding?
It was a great feeling. The energy in those town halls, and oh my gosh, Jeff, we went to how many of these town halls? Like, that's what we did. People were like, you're going where? You're going to the dump? Like, what are you doing? And that's what we did all the time. And, I think it was fun. We were in it together, but it was also this sort of sense of accomplishment of like, okay, we got them. Like, this time we got them. Like, we have them saying this. We have an example of this. We can show this. Like, we were able to start to connect the dots. Because that's the thing is, every time you uncovered one piece of information, it led to a whole mountain of other information, which it just got deeper and deeper. The number of people implicated in this, who had financial stakes in the different land, that if this land was polluted, like, there were so many levels of it. So it was exciting. And, when we shared it to the town and folks, you could just hear the volume in the room go up, the energy go up.
And I think it was kind of refreshing for them to have a forum, to have an opportunity to talk about it, and to realize that there were other people who were interested and wanted to get to the bottom of it.
This cascading exposure of problems is always part of an investigative project. So maybe you can give some specific examples of how that unfolded.
Well, one example of how the story would just spread out was after we were on a local TV channel one evening. Immediately after the news segment ended, I got a phone call on my landline, and it was somebody who didn't want to reveal his name, but I knew he had a parrot in the background. And he said, what you guys are doing is you're on the right track, but you're only scraping the tip of the iceberg, he said. There's so much more going on in Orange County besides that one dump that you're looking at, the Wallkill dump. And he proceeded to say that he knew for a fact that there were toxins that were dumped at other landfills in Orange County, particularly the big one, the Orange County landfill.
And the new documentary about you shows that this new anonymous source was very much like a character in a movie. He said to you, call me Mr. B, very mysteriously. And he kept emailing you and calling you at all hours. He'd parcel out more secret information.
Yeah, he became my phone buddy.
Until finally, he agreed to meet you, and he met with the students, and he told you his name.
Mr. B was Armando Balancioni. He was a deputy sheriff in the Orange County Sheriff's Department. He was a bit nervous about coming into school, but ultimately he did.
And as you say, you brought him into the TV studio in your high school English class. And here's an excerpt of Mr. B.
I was told that there's a $5,000 bounty on my head that the first driver that runs me over gets it. And I don't mean run me over to give me a broken toenail. Oh, no. It was to bury me with the waste. There's no doubt in my mind.
And what he had was incredible evidence of tickets that he had written, that other deputy sheriffs had written to organized crime.
A fine? I mean, giving them a fine, you mean?
Yeah, these were environmental violation tickets. Like a ticket that a policeman would write. Back in those days, it wasn't computerized, so it had carbon paper, I think. They would write a ticket, and it would immediately create 3 copies of it, 2 or 3 copies. 1 copy would go to the perpetrator, 1 copy would stay with the arresting officer, and then other copies would go to the sheriff and I think to the judge.
Yeah, but you and the students discovered that those tickets for illegal dumping that this deputy had issued had basically disappeared.
There were no copies of them in the judge's chambers. There were no copies with the county clerk's office. There were no copies with the DA. So those tickets just disappeared and they were never paid. And they were pretty hefty fines, at least $2,500 each.
So one day, a black, I think it was Cadillac and a Mercedes pull up, and all these Italian guys smell like garlic and stuff, and I'm Italian. They come out, and who is this guy, Balancione? I said, oh, here we go, it's the Guido Sarducci.
The type of toxins that he was talking about and that we were hearing about from other people at the Wallkill dump were mostly industrial byproducts, a lot of petroleum-based substances from Ford Motor Company, which was down in Mahwah, New Jersey. Truckloads of solvent were brought up. This was the stuff that they used to clean the assembly racks when the car parts went through the painting room. And these solvents, this sludge, was highly toxic, would melt workers' gloves. Battery casings, battery waste, because we had a smelting plant in town, were a big part of the illegal dumping, and also hospital waste. Red bag waste was mixed in with all the sludge and all the other garbage.
Yikes.
And was this leaking into the drinking water?
Hard to say. Town of Wallkill uses wells, and the wells weren't specifically next to the Wallkill dump. But the other landfills we looked at were right along the Wallkill River and on top of the largest aquifer in Orange County. So the assumption is, yes, it polluted the aquifer. Years later, they built a prison on top of that aquifer, and instead of being able to just drill a well down below the prison and get the water there, they had to send a pipe out miles and miles away to pump the water in because they had polluted what was under them.
Just a reminder to everyone, we're talking with the real-life stars of a new documentary, Teenage Wasteland. Fred Isseks was an English teacher at Middletown High School in New York, and Rachel Raimist and Jeff Dutemple were 2 of his dozens of students who investigated how criminals were dumping toxic wastes illegally in the town's landfill back in the 1990s.
I don't want to get too wonky, but Jeff, I was really interested to hear that you and your fellow students started learning about some of the classic tools of investigation, modern journalistic investigation. You high school students started filing Freedom of Information Act requests, right? Do you remember this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, it took me years to learn how to use FOIA's Freedom of Information Act requests, where you send a note under the law to a government agency and say, hey, I hear you have documents about X, Y, and Z. I want them. And according to the law, in most cases, you're supposed to get them. There's a scene in the documentary, which comes from the film that you and your fellow students made almost 30 years ago. There's a scene where you're trying to get these government records that show what's going on at the landfill, and you're having a tense standoff with the employee there.
It's wild that was part of our education through Fred, to be a part of our community, to really be engaged teens. Whereas, I think the assumption was back then, and, probably still now, that whenever there's a generation of teens coming up, basically all they're doing is, messing around and getting high and, and we were probably doing a little bit of that too, but also we were trying to be good stewards of our society and our environment. And, it was very frustrating to be met with adversity at every corner from the previous generations. but learning that we had those tools like FOIA, and essentially just being able to shove a microphone or a camera in front of someone's face and have them answer the questions because they underestimated us.
Jeff, you were talking about confronting officials, or I don't know if that's the word you used.
The older generation.
The older generation, thank you. There's a remarkable scene where you and your fellow students are interviewing the editor of the town newspaper in your high school TV studio. Now, you've talked about how you took your early documentaries to the Grange Hall and city council meeting. Well, here you are saying to the editor, we've also taken our films to your newspaper, and nobody has called us back about it. Nobody seems to have any interest.
Everybody that we've interviewed, we've done a lot of interviews and we've gone a lot of places.
And Jeff, this is you asking the questions back when you were in high school. For the record, the newspaper editor is Gary Grossman.
And a lot of people that we've interviewed blame the problem on wide-scale corruption with the politicians, both county and state, and organized crime. I'm just saying.
What was your question?
I'm just saying that the people we've interviewed have said that there is a problem there of corruption.
Possibly. Do they have proof?
Well,
we're all entitled to our opinions about everything. I think that one of the things that we have to learn as reporters is that there's an old saying in our business, when your mother says she loves you, check it out.
We've asked the questions and we've done the research. We did it. We've been doing it for a year and a half now, and still nobody wants to listen to us. We dropped the tape off at the Times Herald Record and nobody saw it. Mm-hmm. We've done the research. If you watch the video, it explains.
I don't really want to see your tape.
What a patronizing jerk.
Yes. That is one way to put it.
I mean, you'd think that a good local journalist would have jumped on this story, actually, and pursued it.
Yeah. And I think that was what was something that was so remarkable to us is that that he didn't want to have anything to do with it, regardless of whether we were able to prove it within the context of that first documentary. There was enough evidence there to at least make a reporter or a journalist want to explore it more, a professional journalist explore it more. So obviously when he came in and said the things he said to me and our class, and we kind of behaved in that very condescending manner. I mean, it threw us all.
And to me, Jeff, watching you in that footage, you look a little shaken.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was angry. I don't remember the feeling of anger, but looking at that interview 30 years later and, seeing clips of it over the years, I mean, I'm obviously angry. It was one of those moments where you almost like you're frozen. You don't know how to react to something because you can't believe that someone would behave this way. I was 15 in that clip.
Yikes.
What impact do you think that had on your career? I mean, what do you do, and how does this whole experience kind of resonate through your adult life?
I am a cinematographer. I work in the camera department for film and television. Rachel and I are both involved in the industry. And, I think what this taught me early on, other than putting a camera in my hand, it was giving me the ability to learn at a relatively young age, like how to read people, how to talk to adults, how to talk to people in general. And obviously, like, this set me on the course for what I was going to do for the rest of my life.
And Rachel Raimist, you also, there's moments of you showing that same, I'm learning how to speak with people. You're talking to some official, I don't remember who this is, who is...
Yes, that was Louis Mills. He was the county executive in the 70s.
In 1974, during your term, was when they built the Orange County landfill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
It was built on an aquifer. Why was that?
When we first put that landfill in 1974, it was considered a model by the state of New York. In those days, no one talked about aquifers.
But in 1970, there was a groundwater study, and I had just thought that common sense would say that you don't put your garbage in your water.
It may have been.
And I just want to say that as you were listening to that clip of you back when you were 16 or something, there was a huge smile on your face now.
Yep. So the whole experience has taught me that, I wasn't wrong. We weren't wrong. Like, so many folks in positions of power just lie or mislead. I think we see that in politics now. That's why so many people have a mistrust of so much of the system. And it was like, cut through the adult BS, common sense says this. And so those are my favorite parts of doing this. I wouldn't say I was the most political young person. I wasn't the biggest environmentalist, but I was someone who really believed in the truth and speaking up and speaking back. So that's why the scenes in the film you see that I ask pretty blunt questions. I get up and make speeches in these town halls, and now I smile looking back. I mean, we've gotten to see this film so many times now, traveling around the country with it. And every time we watch it, I see something new, and I feel a sense of pride for, what we did and what we learned and who we are, and we were right.
We should say, by the way, that at the same time that you guys were doing really serious investigating, you did have moments of fun. Here's a clip when you were filming Jeff and Rachel.
Jeff, you're taping. It's the red lights on.
Jeff, you're a dick.
Jeff, you're a dick.
Yeah, Jeff, you're a dick.
You're a dick, Jeff.
You're a dick, Jeff.
You're a dick, Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff, you're a dick.
And one thing I also like in your films is that, Fred, you did sort of direct the students in doing stand-ups, the way a producer would do on television.
Yeah. So just go off in that direction looking serious. So everybody, quiet on the set. Here we go.
My name is Jeff Dutemple, and I'm a student at Middletown High School.
Okay, wait, stop. We're going to take that part out, we decided.
Okay.
Just a little bit louder, but not much.
Okay. This old dump is
Start with this old dump.
Yeah. This old dump is symbolic of the general failure of our government to protect us.
Okay, hang on. That was good. So this thing.
Yeah, Fred directed this. Fred directed us. One of the first assignments that I remember getting in electronic journalism was he just gave us a camera and he taught us like what man on the street interviews were. It was just come up with any question that you want, just go and ask everybody, edit it together, and like that's the assignment. Like it was teaching us how to be articulate and how to how to speak to people.
That's great. What a great experience. Did you get pushback, you or Fred? Was there some backlash or pressure on you to cease and desist?
There was, yeah. One example, we went to a meeting of the Orange County Legislature, and we sat up in the balcony. We had a camera. We recorded the part of the meeting that we were most interested in. We didn't say boo. We didn't bother anybody. We were very quiet, and then we left. And after we left the meeting, I was told by somebody who had remained that the chairwoman of the legislature kind of pulled the microphone close to her mouth, leaned in and said, "Don't worry about them. They're from Middletown High School. I'm talking to the school board. They won't be back." I think they tried to get to the Board of Education, tried to get to the administration and have them sort of pull the plug.
And did that happen at all? Was there pressure from the board or the administration?
They had a one very strange board meeting, I recall, when they were discussing how they could exercise editorial control over what we produced. But they were in the difficult spot of taking a popular program and saying it's going in the wrong direction when what we were doing is exposing major crimes in the community. It's a difficult thing to push back on high school students and their teacher who are involved in a project of citizenship. They couldn't exactly point to the fact that we were going to meetings and say, well, that's a bad thing to do. They couldn't point to the fact that students were getting up to the microphone and speaking at these meetings, and say, well, you shouldn't do that. They couldn't say you shouldn't research issues that have to do with the health and well-being of the community. They'd look foolish if they told us to stop.
Well, fast forward to today, knowing what you all know about the current atmosphere and what's happening in schools, pressure from the very top, from the Trump administration, what you can teach about history, what you can't, what you can teach about sexual orientation, what you can't. So I'm just wondering whether the atmosphere has changed to the point where it might not be as acceptable for students to go out and do what you all did 30 years ago. In Middletown High School, is this still going on, or is there investigative journalism?
Not to my knowledge, there's not. Back in the 90s, it was a politically charged time then as well. And one way that we avoided running into those kinds of censorship problems was we rarely, if ever, used those two words, Republican and Democrat, when we were doing our investigation. We used the word corrupt quite a bit, but it didn't know any party lines, the kind of corruption that we were looking at. We were fortunate enough to have corrupt politicians from both parties.
Fortunate enough, yeah. Bipartisan corruption, yeah.
We knew if we took sides there'd be trouble, but we just kind of hewed to the point that we represent the community and the community's best interests in an issue that isn't all that complicated. You don't put poison in your water. And if you're a fan of that, you've got to be out of your mind, or you've got to be very crooked.
Now the outcome of all this investigative work, which you did so well, was not at all, well, I would say not all happy, was it?
Yeah, this is the downer part of the whole story.
I mean, you exposed all this stuff, the toxic waste being dumped illegally into landfill that was probably leaking into the aquifer. The mob was involved in these companies. Tickets would be issued for, hefty fines that somehow never got to judgment. The townspeople appreciated what you were doing. The local press didn't do anything about it. And what happened in the end? I mean, where was the result of all of this?
Well, can I summarize briefly? The town said, okay, we're going to fix the problem at the Wallkill landfill. And they hired a company to cover the landfill, basically with a concrete hat. So forget what's going on underneath the toxic waste in the ground where it's leaking. They just covered the whole thing up so you couldn't see it. I mean, what a joke.
The toxic waste is still down in there and will continue to slip silently into the groundwater. The cap will not stop that, but it will require millions and more millions of dollars just to keep up appearances. It looks like the people in the landfill remediation business will be cleaning up for a long time to come. Our children and our children's children will be tending to this lethal garden forever.
This kind of thing has sometimes been called a frozen scandal, where good investigative reporting exposes wrongdoing, but then nothing happens to rectify it. Is that a fair assessment here?
It's hard to tell. Sometimes when we were doing all this work, it felt like we were shooting arrows in the dark. And unless you hear somebody scream, you don't know if you're hitting anybody or not. We never got a moment where, this was back in the 90s anyway, where anybody came up to us and said, wow, you guys, you did it. You solved the case. You cracked it open, and now everything is going to be good. We never had that moment. But it felt from the very beginning like what we were doing was important. And it also felt that we were tapping into a lot of archetypes of stories that are really important to our culture. And one of those archetypes is the story of youth being idealistic and wanting to do the right thing. So we had a David and Goliath story that I think had universal appeal. So that even when nothing happened back then, I have the feeling that it had an impact on the community that can't actually be measured, and that perhaps we were instrumental in preventing some things from happening. Back in the 90s, they wanted to site another landfill in Orange County, and it didn't happen because there was too much public opposition to it.
That's a good point.
And I'd like to think that we were partially responsible for that. But I think the fact that it's lived, the story has lived for these 30 years and is now re-emerging with Jesse and Amanda's film, Teenage Wasteland, that it kind of demonstrates that we were right, feeling that the story had universal appeal.
You know, I think having incredible filmmakers like Jesse Moss and Amanda McBain revisit the story and open up Fred's archives, I think in a way it's felt like a real justice for Fred and for the work that we were doing, that now people are aware of what we were doing. After one of the screenings, my oldest friend of more than 50 years, she was like, "That's what you were doing? I had no idea." And, you know, I was with her all the time. And, you know, my siblings, my family, no one knew what we were doing. And it took a film 30 years later to really shed light on what it really was and all the things that we learned.
Well, I'm glad you haven't become cynical, and it's really inspiring, actually. I mean, this film ought to be seen by students and teachers all across the country as an inspiring example of what they can do, not just to expose wrongdoing, but to educate students in how to deal with government, how to deal with authority, how to uncover truth, all the tools that are available. So it's badly needed now.
I think the lessons here are much wider and go much deeper than just one story in one place in one small town in New York. It really is a universal story, and it really is about the way that great teachers can spark self-confidence and creativity and intellectual curiosity and, you know, create the conditions for young people to go out into the world and, you know, speak up and tell good stories.
Fred Isseks, Rachel Raimist, Jeff Dutemple. They are three of the main characters in the new-ish documentary, Teenage Wasteland. Thank you guys so much for spending this time with us. What a great project you did, and what a great documentary about the project you did.
Yeah, thanks so much to all three of you. It's been a pleasure, really.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And you're not a dick, Jeff. You're a really nice guy.
And that's it for this episode of Two Reporters. By the way, we want to thank one of the former students at Middletown High School for telling us about this incredible story in the first place. Josh Dickstein also worked in the investigation into toxic wastes, and now he happens to be both Dave's and my brilliant physical therapist. And he told me about the new documentary one day while he was fixing my achy hip. Dave, what's Josh fixing on you?
Well, he's done with me, actually. But he helped me a lot several years ago, my back problems. But he is a really superb physical therapist and much in demand.
And Josh, thank you for taking part in the high school investigation back when you were there. And thanks for telling us about it.
And start looking for the documentary Teenage Wasteland on major streaming platforms sometime after New Year's. Meanwhile, you'll find us on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or pretty much any leading podcast site. And we hope you'll check out more of our work at tworeporters.org. I'm David Shipler.
And I'm Daniel Zwerdling. Please join us again soon for another episode of Two Reporters. Bye-bye.